everybody, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and I will be doing my Deadpool review. But before I get to that, I have to talk about the Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom news again, because the reaction to this has been insane. Now, this video will end up being titled Why Marvel Cast Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom. Why did Marvel cast RDJ as Dr. Doom? And the big answer to that question is, and the big obvious answer is something that I've been talking about even far back when Endgame had ended, when they first kind of announced they were doing this multiverse thing. I always said, you know what would be cool? If they had an alternate reality Tony Stark, who was the bad guy of the Avengers movie. Because, first of all, from a thematic standpoint, I'm going to tackle this from a logistical standpoint. Why they're doing this. First of all, as we all know, this was not their original plan. Or at the very least, it wasn't their original plan to make this first Avengers movie have him be in it. Have him be the central part of it. Maybe Kang Dynasty was always gonna end with Robert Downey Jr. playing Dr. Doom at the very end of the movie, and him showing up and like taking control, and that would have led to Secret Wars. Maybe that was always gonna happen. But him being the lead of this first movie, it being the Russo brothers, it being I believe it's just Marcus and McFeely writing it and bringing back almost everyone, including Alan Silvestris as, you know, the composer. That wasn't supposed to be, but due to many issues in the MCU, some outside of their control and some directly in their control, they've had to pivot. Obviously, they wanted to have this be Kang's thing, and they were building to Kang being the villain. They were building to this multiversal war, and that's what they've kind of been building in Doctor Strange, in Loki, in Spider-Man in Spider-Man No Way Home, and even in the Marvels. They have been building this. They just built to it again, kind of, or alluded to it again, in Deadpool and Wolverine. They have been building to this multiversal conflict, to this crescendo where the multiverse would eventually flatline and there'll be one universe. That's kind of what they've sort of been building to. But they were building to it having Kang be the lead bad guy that they had to stop. That was obviously what they've been building to. But once they pivoted, once Jonathan Majors off the camera antics, not to mention that people were kind of mixed on Kang anyways. As you all know, I love Kang the Conqueror, particularly in the comic books, particularly in the Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the animated series version of him. So when they announced that they were going to do Kang, I was excited. I was excited to see Damocles, his ship. I was excited to see the legions of Kangs and the councils of Kangs, and I was excited. And then they cast Jonathan Majors, and I was even more excited. Kang the Conqueror had me hyped. I was hyped for it. It was great. And while Jonathan Majors did great as Kang, and both seasons of Loki, he was the only great thing in Quantumania. At the same time, Quantumania was not a very successful movie. Not a lot of people went out to see it. So not only did not a lot of people go out to see it, it was critically panned. So he's technically in one of the worst reviewed Marvel movies of all time, and Kang the Conqueror is the centerpiece of it. So not only is Kang the Conqueror associated with one of the worst movies in the MCU, while Loki is a great show and me and you agree it's awesome, Loki isn't getting like Game of Thrones numbers. Not everybody knows what's going on Loki. Not everybody knows people right now are still watching Deadpool and Wolverine, wondering who the fuck the TVA are. So Kang the Conqueror has not only lost steam in the interest of fans, he's associated with Jonathan Majors being convicted of being associated with all this negativity, potential assault towards women, which we know we've kind of, if you've looked into it, it's not quite what we think it is. There's a lot of grayness around that whole situation, but at the same time, he's associated with that kind of shit. So not only is he off the camera associated with all this negativity, but the character itself, as shown, hasn't been, there is no hype behind it. There's no hype behind Kang the Conqueror. So Marvel had to cut their losses. Now, I will tell you this. I do still think Kang the Conqueror will be in this, both Avengers movies. He just won't be played as Jonathan Majors, and he just won't be that, he won't be the center role. He might be a smaller role, but I think he'll still be in those movies. But I digress. That's why they had to pivot away from that. And once they decided to pivot away from that, it has been too far in the game. We are 2 fucking phases in. We're like, I don't know, if you add up the fucking Disney Plus shows, we're like 14, 15 movie projects in. You can't back down. It's too far. The station has, the train has left the station. This shit's going down. We gotta wrap this multiversal shit up. But we gotta wrap it the fuck up. They can't back down. They can't backtrack. They can't push shit 3, 4 years down the line anymore. It's not gonna do it. They got to land this ship. Now, they gotta land this ship. And so they brought back the Russo brothers because they're like, okay, we need steady hands. We need people who we know can handle a movie of this magnitude. We've already seen them handle it in Infinity War and Endgame. There's no doubt we're gonna get the same writing crew back. We're gonna get the crew who handled Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. They're gonna come back and they're gonna handle this shit. We need to land this damn ship. But also, who the fuck's gonna be the villain? Now, I love Victor Von Doom. I absolutely love Doom. And if I was picking up a comic book and Doom was if I was playing a video game, if I was picking up a comic book and the main villain was Doom of this big, huge, epic thing, I'd be like, awesome. I know Doom. I know his backstory. I know his motivations. I know everything about him. There's so much built-in history already with Doom. There's so much already there's all these dynamics with even other villains with Doom. So I know all this going into that comic book / video game. So immediately I'm like, awesome, let's roll. People have to forget, and comic book fans do this all the time. I used to have huge arguments about this back in the day. I remember when Civil War came out in the 2016, believe it or not. Man, it feels like so forever ago. But when Civil War came out, I used to have arguments with people about, certain characters not being involved in it. Maybe it should be bigger. Maybe it should have been built up to more. There was arguments about that all over the place. There's arguments about Thanos and, I've gotten into so many arguments with hardcore comic book purists that it's fucking a headache to me at this point, really. But the thing about this is, the fact of the matter is, there is no time to properly build Doom as a Avengers level big bad threat. The thing is, Kevin Feige, clearly, from the way he handled Thanos and the way he handled Kang, he likes the audience to have an emotional connection to whoever the big bad is. Because that's what he was doing with Kang. It didn't work. Things didn't go the way that they were supposed to go. But that's what he was doing with Kang, with these different versions of him. Clearly, the story they were telling with Kang was that there's different aspects of him, there's different versions of him, and they were gonna tell that story. They were gonna have the audience make a connection with this character, and then the big Avengers movie would pop around. Except they were gonna do it more with Kang because with Thanos, he was always vaguely in the background. We really only saw him in Guardians, and we really didn't even see him again really until Infinity War and Endgame. Whereas with Kang, they were going to have us get to know him, have to get to know different versions of him and different projects. It just didn't pan out. But they don't have time. This movie comes out in 2 years, Avengers Doomsday. This comes out in 2 years. Next year, the Fantastic Four movie comes out. Today, like next year on this day. It's supposed to come out late July. Again, next year. Which means they would only have a year to build up hype for Doctor Doom being the villain of an Avengers movie. That's not gonna work. Especially since we all know that Galactus will be kind of the main villain of this Fantastic Four movie. Doctor Doom might not even show up to the end of that movie. They can't build Doctor Doom as an Avengers level, proper Victor Von Doom from Latveria, magic and science and mom getting taken to hell, and they can't do all that in a year. They can't build all that. So Marvel had to make a decision, and this is the point I'm really getting to. The real reason they got they brought Robert Downey Jr. back to play Doctor Doom is because he is a character, an actor, and a character that the audiences already have a connection to. And the inner play, the inner emotional play, the inner, what's the word I'm looking for here? The dynamics between him, what he's gonna be as a villain, and the dynamics between what he's gonna do. I mean, can you imagine when Peter Parker finds out who he is? Can you imagine when Rhodey finds out who he is? Can you imagine when Pepper and Happy and his daughter, who will be older now, finds out who he is? Can you imagine all these things? Can you imagine his reaction when he comes to this world and sees that there's a version of him who is a hero, who is loved? Can you imagine those reactions? You imagine the reactions from everyone when he shows up and they find out who he is. Which, by the way, I shit you not, they're gonna play this up. They're gonna play up who he is until the very fucking end. And you know what? He might even try to replace Tony Stark on our reality. He might try to bullshit and pretend like he is Tony Stark for a little bit. There's so much dynamics and interplay, and there's such an interesting journey and such an interesting conversation to be had because what is the multiverse about? At the end of the day, what if the show has kind of shown this great? At the end of the day, the multiverse is about different decisions, different outcomes. And what is more multiverse than an evil version of Tony Stark potentially coming back as Doctor Doom? What is more multiverse than this? It's what the whole thing's been about. That's why it perplexes me that I see comments like laziness or desperate being thrown out there. No, laziness and desperate would be if they brought him back just to play Iron Man. If they brought him back to play Iron Man and they were like, the leads of this Avengers movie will be Robert Downey Jr. returning as Tony Stark, Hugh Jackman returning as Wolverine, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire returning as Spider-Man. Yes, these three will lead this movie. That would be desperate. That would be desperate. But having the villain of your multiverse saga be the hero of the Infinity Saga, that's just poetic, ain't it? And it's going to do so much. It's going to do so much. Also, save hands. Because I am so curious to see how Robert Downey Jr. is going to play this. Is he going to play this like he's just like an evil Tony Stark? Is he going to play this like darker? Like, we've already seen him in Oppenheimer and other things. So it's like, how is he going to play this character? Like, I'm so curious how they're going to introduce him. How is he going to interact with the people in the main 616? Like, is he going to have magic? Is he going to not? I'm more curious than not. And the thing about it is, if you're cautious, I got you. I understand. But the negativity is just mind-blowing to me. I'm like, good God, man. Whatever. Anyways, those are my thoughts. That's why I think they brought him on. And that's kind of the general direction I think they're going in. Anyways, thank you guys for joining the Comic Game Movie Show. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.